In this video, I'm going to show you how to make this easy beginner knit pumpkin. We're going to begin by making a super easy knit rectangle, which I'm going to show you every stitch of the way. Then we're going to assemble it and add some fun decor to give it a little texture and add a little extra to the top of our pumpkin. This is a super easy project and I'm going to show you how to do it every stitch of the way. Our finished pumpkin has a height of about 3 inches, just the pumpkin part, including the stem is about 5 inches, and it has a 16-inch circumference around. For the top of your pumpkin, it's really up to you how creative you want to get. You could do a cinnamon stick stem like I did. You could do a little twig that you might find outside. You could even knit a little strip of a stem colored yarn to make a stem of your own. Now, you could keep a very plain stem or you could tie a little ribbon like I did. I used this wired burlap ribbon for mine, but you could use other types of ribbon. This is an unwired burlap ribbon that just has a little bit of a different look. You could use some twine, really anything, but I will say if you do tie some ribbon around your stem, whatever you choose for your stem, it does hide some of the things and adds a little bit extra texture onto your pumpkin. We're going to learn how to add all this later on in the video, but as an option, a cinnamon stick or a branch or a little piece of twig or something like that, and then some ribbon to wrap around it. For this project, you're going to need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle to sew your pumpkin up, and you're also going to need a tape measure. We're going to be knitting for so long and before binding off, so this will be really helpful to get the measurements just right. We're also going to be stuffing our pumpkins with some polyfill, or it's also called fiberfill. Now, if you don't have this, no problem. You can use some yarn scraps. Like if you have some extra yarn laying around, you can stuff it with yarn. You could use fabric scraps, even cotton balls. So if you don't have it, just use some things that you may have around the house. But just a little handful is all you need. We're going to be using some US 11 8mm straight knitting needles. And we're going to be making a flat rectangle and seaming it all up. Now for our yarn, we're going to be using about 40 yards of, that is a little bit extra, so we can use some extra pieces to seam our pumpkin up and to cinch the top and bottom and to give it those nice divots that pumpkins have, but about 40 yards of a number 6 super bulky yarn. This is Wool Ease Thick and Quick in the pumpkin colorway. I thought that was a perfect yarn for this. There's also some other super bulky 6 yarns that would work great, and this yarn in particular comes in tons of colors and all kinds of different pretty fall colors for your pumpkins as well. So let's get started. Now all you're going to need to start is your needles and your yarn. You don't need any of the other stuff till the end. So grab your yarn, and what we're going to do is we're going to use the long tail cast on. So the long tail cast on, you have to sort of estimate the yarn that you'll need because we're going to be using it from both the yarn ball and our tail. We're going to do about a wingspan's worth of yarn. And all I mean by that is take the yarn in one hand, stretch it across the front of you to the other hand, and that's about how much yarn you'll need. We're just estimating here. And you'll have a little tail at the bottom. So once you figure out how long you want your tail to be, grab just one of your needles. And if you've ever done the long tail cast on, you can skip one ahead of this part. But if you've never done it before, what you'll want to do, and I'm going to come way in here so you can see, is we're going to wrap the yarn around our fingers to make a loop like that and pinch. Then we're going to take the yarn and we're going to go behind this loop, okay? Then take your needle, reach in, bring up that loop, and then just tighten, okay? You want to just kind of open that up and tighten it onto your needle, just like that. Now, casting on takes a little bit of practice, but I'm going to try and show it to you the easiest way that I know. So we're going to have a 1 strand of yarn that goes to our yarn ball. This is called the working yarn. And then the other strand is our long tail that's going to come towards you. Now you're going to let it kind of hang down. Again, if you've done the long tail cast on, you can skip on ahead. You're going to kind of let it hang down so that it makes like an upside down V. Now take your index finger and your thumb, come into that V like that. Now take your pinky and kind of pinch the bottom. Open it up and it'll look like a diamond, okay? Now I'm going to zoom way back in so you can see. And what we're going to do now is cast on 30 stitches, okay? So let's do the first couple together nice and slow, and then we'll pick up our speed, okay? So take your needle in your hand, and you're gonna come around your thumb. So before we do that, this counts as one stitch. When we just did our first stitch when we did our slip knot, okay? So take your needle to do our second stitch, and we're gonna go up under the thumb and pick up that yarn, come around the finger, and then the loop that your thumb is making, come through that thumb loop. Did you see how I picked up that stitch? And then tighten. Not too tight because we need to work back into these stitches. Okay, go back in, create your diamond. Now go up under your thumb, around your finger, and through your thumb loop. And there's our next stitch. You don't have to let go of the yarn now at each point. You can just kind of tighten it and you still have your diamond shape, okay? Up under the thumb, through the finger, through the thumb loop, and tighten, okay? So now we have 4 stitches. Let's do a few more slow ones. Go up under the thumb, around the index finger, and through that thumb loop, and tighten. Around the thumb, around the finger, through the thumb loop, and tighten. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, let's pick up a little bit more speed. You can always go back in the video, and there is a slow motion feature you can utilize as well. Okay, so 6, that's 7, 8, 9, 10. You can push things back if you need to. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32, okay? So now all of our stitches are cast on and we're ready to go. And you can see we have a little bit of a tail left, so we estimated well. Okay, so take your other needle and we're gonna knit all the stitches of this first row, okay? Now again, if you've knit before, just go ahead and knit all the stitches of this row. If you've never knit before, I'm gonna go through it nice and slow with you. So what we wanna do is we want to take our needle, our empty needle, and go, again, this is our working yarn connected to our yarn ball, and we're gonna take our needle and we're gonna come up under that left needle like that. And we're going to take, I like to hook mine on my pinky, but you can hold your yarn however you feel comfortable. We're going to take our yarn and wrap it around that bottom needle only, and then bring this needle from back to front, catching that stitch. See how I caught that stitch? Just like that, and then push it off. And now you have a stitch on the right needle. And if you need to tighten that tail, I like to give that a little tug. Okay, let's move on to the next one. We're going to do the same thing. Take your needle, come up under that other needle, wrap the yarn around the bottom needle only. Now you're going to take the needle from the back to the front, catching that stitch, and push it off, okay? Now let's do it again. We'll do it nice and slow one more time. Take the right needle, we're going to come up under that top needle, wrap the yarn around the bottom needle. Now bring the needle from the back to the front, and push it off, okay? Now, let's zoom out a little bit because our piece is growing, and we're gonna just knit the rest of the stitches. I'm gonna pick up speed. Again, you can go back in the video and watch it nice and slow if you need to see it a little bit more. So we're just gonna knit all the stitches from this row here, okay? So just go ahead and knit all those stitches all the way across. And if you need to push things back, I like to kind of shift these up and push those back as I'm gaining more stitches. And if you may notice, as we're knitting, you are passing all of your stitches from your left needle to your right needle, okay? So all the stitches are being moved from one needle to the other, okay? And when we go to turn our work later, it'll go back to the other side again. Okay, so again, I'm just knitting all the stitches, pushing things back if you need to. Just like that, all the way across. And I really love this yarn color. It's so perfect for a fall pumpkin. But you can also use, you could do some more modern like cream color pumpkins or some turquoise pumpkins. This yarn comes in tweed. Self-striping yarn would be really fun for this project. So we're just coming up to the very last group of stitches here. All right, just working our last stitch, and row 1 is complete, okay? So we can kind of straighten things out. Now for row 2 is just as easy. We're just gonna purl all the stitches on this row, okay? So I'll do the first couple of purl stitches nice and slow, and then we will kind of depart and speed it up a little, okay? So when you purl, purling is kind of the opposite of knitting. So we're gonna keep our yarn in the front when we purl. Okay, now for knitting, remember it was in the back. So for purling, I like to bring my yarn a little bit out in front of me here, but we're gonna purl the stitches so it's kind of backwards, okay? So now take your empty needle and we're going to take it and go over top of the needle now, okay? So take your right needle and go over top of that left needle, and you're gonna take your yarn and you're gonna wrap it around the top needle this time. And then you're going to go from from front to back, catching that stitch and push it off. Okay, let's do that again. Take your needle, go into the top this time, wrap the yarn around the top needle, go from front to back, catching that stitch and push it off. Okay, so around and push it off. Insert the needle, wrap it around the top one, and push it off, okay? And we're just going to do that all the way across. So doing this, when you knit all the stitches of one row and then purl all the stitches of another row, that's how you get those iconic knitted V's that you see. There's knitted fabric that's so iconic. Now you can do lots of different fabrics with knitting, of course, but that kind of those little knit V's is what we're creating here. And you'll see it once we flip it over. This is the back side that we're looking at right now. Or some people call it the wrong side. But once we flip it over to the right side of our work, or some people call it the public side of our work, you'll see those little V's that I'm talking about. Okay, so we're just working purl stitches all the way across. And again, if you want to use the slow motion feature in YouTube, it's really helpful. I like to go slow and then pick up speed as you're working on your projects too. Okay, so we're just keeping going with our purls. All right, coming up to the end, we're on our last 2 stitches here, just purling those all the way to the end, okay? So now we're at the end here. And so for the remainder of our pumpkin rectangle that we're starting with, now I just wanted to show you a little bit of those V's we're starting to see now emerge. So what we want to do now is keep repeating rows 1 and 2 over and over again. So remember, row 1 was knit all the stitches, row 2 was purl all the stitches, and we're going to just be repeating rows 1 and 2 over and over and over again until our piece, and this is where your tape measure comes in handy, until your piece is from the beginning edge here 6 inches tall. So not very big. It's not going to require a ton of knitting, but we're just going to go until our piece is about 6 inches tall. So I'm going to keep going, repeating rows 1 and 2 over and over until I get 6 inches, and then we'll rejoin and I'll show you how to bind off your stitches, and we're going to start assembling our pumpkin. Okay, so I kept going with my knit and purl stitches, and I have about, from the starting edge up, I have about 6 inches. So now we're ready to bind off. So to bind off, what you'll want to do is make sure you end on a row that you will be knitting, okay? So when you're about to start a row that you'll be knitting, we're going to bind off. So on the written pattern, this is called binding off in knit because we're knitting the stitches we're binding off. You can also bind off in purl if you have it reversed, but we're going to bind off in knit. Now, this is just a basic bind off. I'm going to show you how to do it. And it's super easy. So all you want to do, let me just zoom way in so you can see what I'm doing here, is you're going to grab your needle and you're going to knit a stitch. Okay, so knit a stitch, and then you're going to knit a second stitch. Okay, now take your left needle and you're going to go back to that first stitch that you knit, and you're going to lift it up, over and off. See, we're lifting it over top of that stitch. You can use your finger to kind of anchor it in place, and off the needle. And so we just did one stitch that we did a bind off one, okay? All right, let's move on and keep going. So knit the next stitch. Now take your needle, lift it up, over and off, just like that. Knit the next stitch, and we're going to do this all the way across. Lift it up, over and off. Knit the next stitch, lift it up, over and off. Knit the next stitch, and we can push our stitches forward if we need to. Lift that up, over and off. Knit the next stitch, and just do this all the way across. There's other ways to bind off in knitting. This is a really basic, simple, easy way to do it, okay? Just the basic bind off is what it's called. Okay, so we're just going to do that for every stitch across. Okay, coming up to the end, we just have a few stitches left, and we're going to bind those off until just one remains. So knit that last stitch, and then bring it up, over, and off until you have one stitch left, okay? So now what we need to do, I have just a little bit of yarn here, and that is going to be perfect for what we need, okay? So what we want to do is cut enough, if you have a little bit of yarn like I do here, you want to cut enough so that you can seam the side and cinch one end, okay? So I would say about 18 or so inches, 18 to 24 if you want to be on the safe side. So go ahead and cut the yarn. And then what we'll do is very carefully loosen up that loop. We have one loop left, and this is an active stitch. So if you pull this, it'll unravel it. So hold on to it and send that tail end that we cut through that loop. And this will create a knot and kind of knot everything off, okay? And just kind of tighten it down. So what we want to do is these iconic V's, these beautiful knit stitches that we created. This is the outside of our pumpkin. So we want to turn it inside out. This is the other side if you want a comparison. And I joined some new yarn. This isn't going to matter. This can stay on the inside because we're going to stuff it, okay? So what we want to do is fold our piece so that those beautiful knit V's are going to be on the inside. We're going to have it inside out for a minute, okay? And so what we want to do, and we can also tuck this tail in here, and this can hang out. Okay, we want to grab our tapestry needle. And what we're going to do is we're going to thread it so it has a little tail, and we're going to sandwich our ends together, okay? We're going to create first a cylinder. And so what we want to do is just seam these edges together. Just hold them together like a sandwich. Make sure they're lined up nice and neat. And we're just going to sandwich them together, okay? And we're doing what's called a whip stitch. So all the whip stitches is a very invisible seam. We're using a matching piece of yarn, which will make it even more invisible. And it's kind of like a spiral through your work, okay? It lies nice and flat, and it's just a really great all-purpose stitch for seaming up, okay? Super easy. Okay, and then we're just going to come down with our seam, go all the way across here. And you want to make sure you're incorporating both layers every time you do a stitch, so you don't have any gaping holes or kind of stuffing popping out or anything like that, okay? You just want to make sure you're incorporating both layers here. So take your time with it. Make sure you're incorporating everything you need. Just like that, okay? So now we're coming towards the bottom, and without taking your needle out, whoops, my little tail got incorporated there. Without taking your needle out, we're going to go ahead and come down this other side and start to cinch our pumpkin. We're going to do a cinch on the top and a cinch on the bottom, but we just want to cinch up the bottom first because we need to stuff the top still, okay? So what we want to do now is make our edges line up once again, and we're just going to come in like this, and do the same whip stitch. We're just continuing around. Now, what you might want to do is when you get about halfway done this stitch, you might want to turn your pumpkin right side out and just make sure your stitches look nice and neat. You don't want to stitch the entire thing and then have to go back and redo it, okay? And if you do have a seam running up this seam here, if you don't love the way it looks, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to kind of camouflage that. Okay, so again, we're just seaming up this side too, and we're later going to pull it snug and tighten it up, okay? But for right now, we're just going to continue our whip stitch across here. Now this is where the fold is, so we're almost at a stopping point. So just keep sewing that up and sewing that up, just like that. Okay, now this part here, we need to bring it in. So very gently, we're going to take our tail. You can take your needle out right now, but you can take your tail and just give it a tug and just kind of pull it in nice and firmly, but without breaking our yarn, okay? Okay, and you might need to like work it a little bit and just kind of, it's super bulky yarn, so it's a little bit bulky, right? So we want to get that all cinched up and then just kind of flip it out and make sure that it's looking okay and it's looking pretty good, okay? So we want to hold it in place though. We don't want it to slip out. So grab your needle again, and what we're going to do is we're going to go in where we left off and pull it almost all the way through until you have a loop, and then send that needle through that loop, whoops, and tighten it up, okay? Now, we don't need to worry about weaving this end in because this is going to be stuffed. So turn your little pumpkin right side out, and we have sort of like a hat. It looks like a little hat. So tuck all your tails in. And then what we want to do is just kind of shape it up a little bit just with your hands. And you're going to grab your polyfill and you're just going to stuff it up with your polyfill, just like that. Just put all your stuffing in there. We want to get a firm stuff, but not overly, because you don't want your stitches to be all stretched out. You want to get a nice firm stuff. Okay, I'm just going to grab a little bit more here. Just like that, okay? And we're just gonna kind of like work the stuffing so that it looks plump, okay? We just want to do that. All right, so grab another piece of yarn. I would say about 12 inches or so. Grab your tapestry needle. And then we're going to sew up the top, okay? Okay, so we're going to come in from the back like this, and we're going to just go all around this top edge. So pull it almost all the way through. Leave yourself a tail and just kind of go in and out along this top edge, okay? This is called, like earlier we did a whip stitch when we seamed our pumpkin up. This is called a running stitch, okay? When you do that classic sewing up and down kind of stitch. Okay, so pull that as you go, leaving that tail because we need something to tie it together. And we're just going to go all the way around. Now it looks a little misshapen. We're going to be fixing all that and get it nice and perfect. Okay, just go all the way around, pulling a little bit at a time as you go with your pumpkin, okay? Just working our running stitch all around the top edge here. In and out, all the way around. And now we're at our tail, okay? So when you leave off here, come back down into the inside of the pumpkin when you get done, okay? Just come back where this other tail is, but facing inward, okay? All right, so now what we want to do is just pull that snug, and we're going to take these two ends and we're going to tie them tight, okay? Tie them nice and tight. We don't want to see any of that stuffing. Okay, so just tie it nice and tight. And don't worry about the ends. We will kind of tuck them into our pumpkin later, okay? So now it sort of looks like one of those round pumpkins, but I want to give it those like pumpkin lines. It looks sort of like one of those smooth pumpkins, okay? So cut another piece of yarn. I would say about 12 inches again, 18 or so. And then we're going to thread our needle. And then what we want to do is come in from the bottom of our pumpkin up to the top, and we're going to stitch those little pumpkin lines in it, okay? So leave yourself a tail in the bottom, okay, just like that. And then we're going to go all around and around, all the way around our pumpkin, okay? So we want to sew a line, go back down and come up from the top. You can use the table to kind of push the needle up. It's getting bulky, okay? So you can, at this point, place the lines where you want them to go, but just pull them in. Okay, so now we're going to cut another piece of yarn because we want to do those iconic pumpkin lines. Okay, so cut another piece of yarn. I would say about 24 inches or so this time. You want to make it a little bit longer. And cut. Thread your needle. And now where you have these tails, we're going to leave these tails intact on purpose so we have something to tie it onto. Go down and come back on the bottom where the middle is. We're going to kind of give it a little shape next, okay? So come down. You can use your table to like find it. It's getting very squishy and it's kind of plumping up a little bit. And now before you pull that all the way through, because you don't want to accidentally pull it through, tie it to one of the tails. Just go ahead and tie it real quick, okay? Now we're going to wrap the yarn around our pumpkin and come back down, okay? And then go back down where you have your other piece of yarn. Using the table, you can kind of push it and pull it through. Now, as you pull it through, this is where you can take a second and sort of place where you want it to be. Now, see, as I tie it tighter, see how it gets that pumpkin shape already? Okay? Now, this will kind of loosen up if you leave it alone. So just kind of hold it, and then we're going to figure out where we want to make our next one, okay? And we're going to send it through the middle, okay? Make sure you come back on the other side where that other piece of yarn is. You're entering and exiting at the same spot each time, okay? And then we're going to pull that snug. See how we're getting that pumpkin shape? Then we're going to, about the same distance, we're going to do it again. So come back up and go back down, okay? And we're just kind of holding it in place, guide it to the right spot, and pull snug, okay? We're going to shape this up a little bit more too. Now, go to the next section, create another segment. Go down through the middle and just keep coming back where you were on the other side, okay? And then pull it snug. And then we have one more segment you can see from the bottom. You can just go right down the middle here. And we're going to go into the middle and pull it snug, okay? Just like that. What a cute pumpkin. All right, so now we don't have anything to tie it to on this side. So what we want to do is go a little bit next to where we were, because we're just going to create like a loop. And then just bring it back up so we have something to tie it to. You need just a tail to snug it up. Grab any one of these tails and just tie it down, okay? Now we can remove our needle at this point because we have our basic pumpkin shape. Now we're going to take care of these tails in just a minute. The next thing we're going to do is we just want to like get those segments nice and defined. Get your pumpkin nice and shaped, and it looks really cute. We've done a really good job. The next thing we're going to do is the stem. Okay, I have turned my glue gun on, and now while that's warming up, let's take care of some of these ends. So whenever you have a plushie thing that you make like this. It's so easy. You just take your needle and you thread it, take one end, stick it down in the middle of the piece and then back out at any random location. And then take your scissors and you can just pull a little and trim and it disappears. Super easy. Okay, so we have a couple tails and you'll probably have a couple tails too. So just do the same thing. Just come out any random location with your tail and give it a trim. And then just do that for the rest of your tails. If you have a really long tail like this, you may want to trim it back first just to kind of like manage it a little easier. And we're just going to do that with our tails. All right, and this is the last one. We'll give it a snip. Okay, so the next thing you'll want to do is we want to get this pumpkin shaped up nice and neat. And we are going to tie some ribbon around our stem. I have a cinnamon stick here. Now, you don't have to use a cinnamon stick. You could use a branch from outside. You could just knit a little strip, like a branch color. But before you glue, you want to make sure you can take your knitting needle if you need to and just kind of like prime the spot because we're going to sort of drill our cinnamon stick down in the middle. And if you look at it like this, it's going to kind of look a little bit long, but we're going to tie a little piece of ribbon on it. It's going to be perfect. Okay. So figure out which end that you like the best. And then get your cinnamon stick ready. And then when your hot glue is ready or your craft glue, whatever you're using, you can go ahead and glue it. Okay, our glue gun is ready to go. You don't need a lot. All you want to do is that hole that you kind of primed ahead of time, you're going to kind of squirt some glue down in there. If you have craft glue, hot glue, whatever, just put a nice blob down in there. Just like that. And again, we're going to put a piece of ribbon so it will be a little forgiving. So I just put some down in there and we're just going to, once again, just kind of like drill this cinnamon stick down in the middle. Now, like I said, it's a little long. If you're not going to put a piece of ribbon, you could take a pair of like wire cutters and just kind of snip the top if you want it to be a little shorter, or you could pre-cut it. I kind of want mine to be a little long like this because I want to put some ribbon on here. So I do have some burlap ribbon. We mentioned this at the beginning of the video, and you can kind of choose whatever color you like. And we're just going to tie it once around and then do sort of like a little cinch like that to make a bow. But before you do that, make sure your glue is completely cool and dry, or otherwise you'll make a big mess on your ribbon. Okay, our pumpkin has cooled. The stem is very sturdy. Now let's just kind of style it a little with a piece of ribbon. Now I have some wired burlap. I also have some that's not wired. It's really up to you if you want a little more contrast with this kind or this one. I really like this color with it. This is nice to have wired because when you store it at the end of the season, it won't get, when it crumples, if you pack it away, you can kind of spruce it back up when you get it back out again next year. All right, so cut a piece of ribbon. I'm going to cut mine a little more than I think because I need to tie it. And I'm also using a pair of scissors kind of on the older side because it is wired. Don't use like your most favorite, best scissors. Okay, so our ribbon is kind of wide, but I like that because you can make a bow looking cut without having to make big loopy bows, which might be a little bulky. So all you want to do is go down the middle here and just pinch the ribbon. And then we're going to tie it around our pumpkin. Okay. Again, this wired ribbon is really nice. If you don't have it, it's okay. It just helps to shape it a little bit. And we're just tying it around our cinnamon stick. Okay. Now this will take a little bit of push and pull to get it nice and beautiful. Okay. So tie it really tight. And then what you want to do is take your hot glue once again, and we're just going to put a little dot down at the base of our cinnamon stick just so it won't slide around. Okay. And then we're going to just kind of push it right on there. And be very careful because burlap has a lot of holes. You don't want it to squish through and burn your fingers. You can also use an implement to hold it in place. Okay, so now that we've tied it once, all we need to do is, and you can also put a dot of glue down here in the front just to kind of anchor it into place. Okay, just be really careful because hot glue, if you're not gentle with it, it will burn you, but it will also kind of make a mess of your project. So if you get a little hot glue like I did here, just give it a little trim. I just got it on like the fuzzy part. So just be really careful with your hot glue and protect your hands too. Okay, so all we want to do now is just take our ribbon and we're going to sort of just shape it up. I want to make kind of like a mock bow. Okay, so we're going to take the two little pieces and then I'm just going to cut, kind of using the side of my pumpkin as a line. I'm just going to sort of cut at an angle towards the cinnamon stick. Okay, we're just going to keep it really simple here. And we're going to just keep bending and just kind of push and pull until you get your shape the way you want it. Okay, and try to do just like a nice clean cut. Okay, and then you can kind of shape up this part. You could put a little crease in it so it looks like a bow. And our pumpkin is complete. It looks beautiful. It has the texture of the cinnamon stick and the burlap and the beautiful knit square that we made and transformed into a gorgeous pumpkin. So that is how you make an easy beginner pumpkin. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial and be sure and hit the subscribe button to get all the latest sparkle and splatter video updates. Thanks again.